Good evening, everyone. Severe Weather Team 9 meteorologist Nathan John joining you for this edition of Nate at 8. And welcome back to the unseasonably warm and dry weather. We saw it a lot going throughout this month. And right here at the tail end of the month, the beginning of October, we're getting back to a lot of the same as we'll deal with those temperatures climbing. We saw 80s today. We're going to deal with those 80s again likely tomorrow. Still mid 70s is the coolest. Still going to be above normal. Those normal highs start to fall into the upper 60s into that first week of October. So still dealing with temperatures mid upper 70s at the coolest. That's still unseasonably warm, but certainly a little bit cooler with respect to the 80s we had for today that we're going to see on tap for tomorrow as well. Thank you so much for joining me for this edition of Nate at 8. Again, that's some of the things we're going to be discussing. We're going to break down the temperatures. And again, the rain chance just non-existent this week. Back to dry weather. Really, last week, just a hiccup in an overall dry pattern that is in place. Now, the sunshine will likely be plenty of it ahead. We're going to notice more of it breaking out as we go through the daytime tomorrow. Abundant sunshine Wednesday, abundant sunshine this weekend. A little more mix of sun and clouds Thursday into Friday morning. But for a lot of this week, we're going to be dealing with a lot of sunshine as well. So this is going to be a quiet stretch of weather. Again, unseasonably warm, dry, good amount of sun. And that's a pretty nice pattern that we have in place for this week. Temperatures coming off the 80s, now falling to the 70s. We're back likely falling through the 60s and just into the 50s tomorrow morning. And that's something else we noticed for a lot of September is the big temperature swings. And we'll notice that as well, likely going throughout this week, going into October, is that we'll deal with temperature swings, which at times can be about 30 degrees. So that's when we can notice that a big drop off in temperatures throughout the night. We can end up even in the 40s for some of these nights ahead, and these high temperatures will still remain 70s to 80s. So again, we get back into big temperature swings, 50s, 80s, 70s, 40s. These temperature swings upwards about 30 degrees for some of these days ahead. Our temperatures now again falling from the 70s and the 60s. We're dealing with some cloud cover in our area, but no precipitation. We won't not anticipating any precipitation with this cloud cover as we go through the night. And while we are dealing with some of this clouds likely into tomorrow morning, notice these clouds thinning out as we go throughout the day, and then a lot of sunshine breaks out by the end of the day tomorrow. We'll notice again highs back mid lower 80s, going to feel similar with respect to today, tomorrow, and likely more sunshine breaking out as we go throughout the day with respect to what we had for today. And with less cloud cover in place, we're going to get back in the lower 50s likely into Wednesday morning, and we'll end up back on the cool side for the start of Wednesday. And then those high temperatures, this is one of the days we'll start to trend a little cooler around the mid 70s for high Wednesday afternoon with plenty of sunshine. Notice the increase in cloud cover then Wednesday night into Thursday, and getting back to more of a mix of sun and clouds Thursday. That will then carry over into Thursday night. But by Friday, it's a similar story with respect to what we're going to deal with tomorrow. Likely deal with that decrease in cloud cover Friday. So plenty of sunshine breaking out on Friday, and then a lot of sunshine will likely remain in place for this weekend. Austin, good evening. This morning was foggy, saw from 8 to almost noon. Saturday, got to enjoy a walk in a massive mushroom that's almost my hand size. Wow, is a big mushroom, Austin. Thank you so much for joining us. And Kyle, thank you for joining us as well. Was this exactly how last year was at this time with the same above average temperatures? I have to go back and look at the temperature trend at this time last year. I don't recall off the top of my head, Kyle. But yeah, we dealt with a lot of warm temperatures last year as well. And I'm not sure exactly how this time period sets up to last year. I'd have to go back and refresh my memory. But yeah, for a lot of that last year as well, it was quite warm. And I do remember it was still quite warm overall, I think, going into fall. We had that first month of cooler temperatures into our last winter, I believe. Before we had a stretch of above normal temperatures for a long period of time on a monthly basis. I think we finally broke that, if I'm not mistaken. And that was it last December, January? We finally broke that stretch of above normal temperatures overall for the month. The end of last year, if not the very beginning of this year, we finally broke it. But I think overall the temperatures were still trending above normal overall for the month at this time last year. But specifically this time period, at the last very end of September, beginning of October, I'd have to go back and refresh my memory. Jeffrey, hello. I'm tuning in from Bel Air, Ohio. Very cool there. Thank you all for tuning in to this edition of Nate at 8. I appreciate it as always. Thank you so much for tuning in. So as we do look ahead again for this week, it's just going to be a quiet stretch of weather. Again, check out the rain threat. Non-existent. There's not even a slight chance that we have in place through this weekend and going into Monday. And if we add up last Friday, there was only a trace last Friday at the Ohio County Airport, and not even that this past weekend, and likely not even a trace here as we look ahead this week either through this weekend. So if you go from last Friday up until this Sunday, and again, I think this even carries over into Monday, but at least looking through this weekend, that brings our stretch of no measurable precipitation at the Ohio County Airport to 10 days again. And we now have 4, and I think a great odds through this weekend, 5. I think we can end up with 5 here by this week, into this weekend, of stretches of 10 plus consecutive days with no measurable precipitation at the Wheeling, Ohio County Airport. Now, over 25 years, this has happened 2 other times, 2024 last year, of course, the historic drought, right? The historic dry period we had last year, in 2006 also. And, the year is obviously it's not done yet, right? We have that potential as we extend into October, maybe even into November, although it does become rarer to see that long of a stretch going into the latter part of fall and the beginning of winter. But it is possible. We'll see. I look back at 2024, 2006, and we did have past this period from October into October, we did sneak in another stretch last year in October in 2024. 2006 also featured a late stretch as well. So we'll see if we can get to 6 coming up in October. If we can sneak in another 10 plus consecutive day stretch, that would be the most then. And again, we'll likely deal with 5 here going into the first week of October. We'll see if we could sneak in another one going throughout October or even into November, if we could sneak in another stretch there of 10 plus consecutive days. But it's an interesting tidbit for you. Dealt with a lot of these long stretches of dry weather here, especially as of recent, but for the year as a whole, we'll tie with the most on record over the past 25 years. And maybe even get the most on record over the past 25 years of these stretches. Austin almost had a spider land right on my face while I was walking back home. Oh my gosh. The spider came out of nowhere and startled me. I remember seeing that it was a bit orange yellowish. That is a terrifying story, Austin. A lot of you joining me feel the same sentiment. That is terrible. Oh my goodness. Geez. I can't imagine that happening. Oh, geez. I'm glad it was almost, Austin. I'm glad it was almost and it wasn't a spider landed right on your face. But that is terrible. Oh my goodness. Sorry to hear that. This evening, the whole sky looked a bit reddish and was very bright, Austin says. Very cool. I have to look at some of those sunset pictures coming in of a gorgeous sunset here in the Ohio Valley. So again, temperatures with the precipitation threat, non-existent temperatures. We talked again, unseasonably warm. Notice again, the average high at the end of this month is 70, but during that first week of October, it begins to fall into the upper 60s, and we're nowhere near that. At most, a handful of degrees from it into Wednesday, Thursday for the beginning of October. Those temperatures start to cool towards the mid 70s, but still just an overall warm stretch of weather likely ahead. And we're right back mid to lower 80s likely into this weekend and early next week. So just, warm and dry. That's the best way to sum up the pattern here as we go over the next week, and quiet here in the Ohio Valley. Now, being said, the tropics, they're quite active. In fact, we are tracking 2 systems, Humberto and Imelda, as we are tracking these 2 systems, Tropical Storm Imelda, Hurricane Humberto. And the good news is, this is quite a rare sight to see 2 tropical systems this close together. And there's an interesting effect in meteorology when you're dealing with 2 tropical systems close together. And this effect is actually going to help keep Imelda away from further impacting the East Coast and even making landfall, as the effect of these two being close together will likely pull Imelda further east out into the Atlantic. And you'll see that if we look at the future cast and we fast forward here, notice what happens as Humberto starts to move further towards the northeast. And the Imelda, you're going to notice these systems are going to start to rotate around each other counter you're going to start to rotate counterclockwise. And this is the Fujiwara effect, is the counterclockwise. These systems, when they're so close together, they'll tend to rotate around each other. And with that being said, as Humberto's pulling away and Imelda is going to want to rotate counterclockwise with Humberto, this actually draws Imelda away from the East Coast. So notice that Imelda not anticipated to make landfall. It's going to be pretty much darting east with Humberto. And as it makes its way further east out into the Atlantic, then thankfully, no impact for us here in terms of any precipitation into the Ohio Valley. Some clouds spilling in from this tropical system. So we're dealing with some cloud cover from it, but that's going to be the extent of us dealing with any impacts from Imelda or Hurricane Humberto. Again, these are going to pretty much dart east and move further away from the East Coast as we do extend further into the week. Again, this is the Fujiwara effect. And it's just these, when we're dealing with these two tropical systems, when they get close together within about 900 miles or less of a distance, when they start to draw close to each other, they tend to rotate counterclockwise around each other. And sometimes they can form into one tropical system or tend to weaken each other. But it's interesting when we see this Fujiwara effect, the counterclockwise rotation around each other. So again, that's why we're seeing that when we go back to what we had here, Imelda wants to start to rotate around Humberto. So now it's getting drawn further east out into the Atlantic. So that ultimately that effect, and the fact that we're dealing with Hurricane Humberto and right now Tropical Storm Imelda, dealing with these two tropical systems so close together is actually good to draw Imelda further east, and ultimately these are going to be moving east out into the Atlantic. So just interesting tidbit as we're looking at the tropics and as activities picking up this time of the year, as we're looking at that. Thankfully, that effect, Fujiwara effect, is actually going to end up saving more potential impacts along the East Coast from those two systems, and they're going to start to dart further towards the east. And Kyle says, I noticed too with the dry weather, the leaves are changing early. Have you got the fall foliage map up yet? And yeah, I was looking into that, Kyle. Low fall foliage color right now. I did pick up on that though. Yeah, it's starting to change, Kyle, already. Still likely going to be a couple weeks, still likely towards the middle to end of October, and is the latest projection of fall foliage from what I was looking into, which again, likely still going to be a little earlier with this dry weather, but it doesn't look like it's too terribly earlier from what we typically deal with. But yeah, this dry pattern can make that fall foliage turn a little earlier, and it can make it overall a little less vibrant, unfortunately. So not in our favor. It's going to be interesting to see how the rain last week is going to play into this, though, because prior to last week, certainly was thinking that the fall foliage might be a bit lackluster, real early this time of the year. But we picked up a lot of rain across the area last week, so it'll be interesting to see how much that comes into play with this fall foliage right now here. As of recent, but yes, starting to turn. We'll deal with the low fall foliage color here going into October, and it'll start to really pick up likely in the next couple of weeks. We should start to get closer to peak. I would still say closer to the middle part of October. I know some projections still want to bring it even a little past that, but going into the middle of October here, which again, that's even in the next 2 weeks, we should start to see that fall foliage peak. And hopefully the rain we had last week is still hopefully gives us somewhat of a vibrant fall foliage. But I know the dry weather this time of the year can unfortunately impact that for the worse. But hopefully we did pick up quite a bit of rain across the area. In fact, the Ohio County Airport over 2 inches of rain in 4 days. And that was a staggering amount considering that we had gone over 60 days, over 2 months, and we only picked up a little over an inch and a half of rain over 2 months. And we picked up over 2 inches of rain in 4 days. A lot of rain fell across the area last week. And the latest drought monitor, the one that was issued last week, last Thursday, it only took into effect what we had for last Monday into early Tuesday morning. So most of the rain that fell last week was not taken into consideration. That will then be taken into consideration for this coming Thursday. So we'll see with the latest U.S. drought monitor for this coming Thursday, the improvement in conditions. I do think there can be some, but I don't think we're reversing this drought, unfortunately. I don't think we're going to reverse it, but there can be certainly some improvements. We'll see just how much. It'll be interesting to see. Because if you look to the drought monitor that was issued last Thursday, the conditions just worsened. It wasn't an improvement. But again, that's just because that very little of that rain that fell last week was actually taken into consideration. Some of it, but we'll see more of that rain that fell taken into consideration for the upcoming one this Thursday. It'll go take into consideration from last Tuesday all the way until this Tuesday early morning. So really through Monday, you could look at it through Monday, last Tuesday through this Monday. And that's what's in consideration then with the drought monitor that's going to be issued for this Thursday. So we'll definitely be interested to see what that the latest U.S. drought monitor is going to be showing this Thursday. And hopefully we can at least get some improvement in these drought conditions because what we see for that following Thursday, it's likely going to be worsening again. So hopefully some improvement now and before those conditions will likely worsen then into that following Thursday for that drought monitor. Just again, bone dry and warm this time of the year. That's not a good recipe for drought. And that's what we'll have in place here likely going throughout this week. But certainly good for any outdoor plans that you want to make as we go through this weekend. Not a threat for rain at all through this weekend. And as you can see, still quite a bit of sun. Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, a lot of sun during this stretch as well. So going to be a beautiful stretch of weather here for the start of October. Doesn't scream October weather, that's for sure. 80s do not scream October weather, but nonetheless, yeah, we're looking at the very, we're almost there, almost on October 1st. And we'll see by the end of October, maybe we can sneak in some snow. How many of you remember some snowflakes on Halloween? I can recall it. And it's not too rare. Not too rare. We'll see. Hard to think of that right now when it's in the 80s. We'll see what we can get in a matter of a month for Halloween. Maybe we get a cool down, maybe some flurries. Maybe. Oh, it's possible. How interesting. Spooky. How spooky. Some flurries in a matter of a month from the 80s to some flurries. Maybe. Maybe. We'll see. We certainly shall see. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate it as always. I hope everyone had a wonderful Monday. Hope you have a great week. Again, some beautiful weather ahead. Getting back to dry and warm temperatures going into the first week of October. Of course, I have the latest coming up. News 9 at 10 on Fox 9. News 9 tonight at 11. Kyle's just saying, no, not that word. You watch come December, January, negatives and snowstorms. Ooh, maybe, Kyle. Maybe. Yes, we'll see. I think this winter could be interesting. And yeah, we'll see. And we'll have more on that. We'll break down this winter forecast coming up here in a couple months, getting into the end of November. We'll start to we'll issue our winter forecast at that point. So if you're interested in how this winter may be setting up, we'll get to that as well over the next couple months. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in. Appreciate it as always. Hope you have a wonderful night. I'll see you tomorrow evening for that next edition of Nate at 8.